data is available to all components. In interviews also they ask like how to transport data from one component to another. How do you answer that? You can transport by using route parameters. You can transport by using search parameters. You can transport by using uh, search parameter means query string. You can transport by using context. Another one, reducer. You can use local storage, session storage. You can use cookies. Cookies also we saw. So the major point about reducer is maintain an application state so that you can access from anywhere. I told you when we learnt about reducer in modern React, that is from React 18 and all, reducer is enough for an application to maintain an application state. But at large scale, you want to maintain more complex data and you want more features like easy to extend, easy to debug. So in that case, you need another library, and that library is what? Redux. Redux is same as reducer. In reducer, if you practiced, you remembered we learned reducer. Reducer contains initial state. Reducer contains actions. Reducer will dispatch the actions, store the data, and handle the data. So you need to practice these three very well: state, context, and reducer. For interviews, especially, you need to remember this. At a larger scale, we need a separate toolkit. And remember, Redux is not only for React. Any JavaScript application can use it. Even Angular people also use Redux. Any JavaScript based technology can use Redux. It is a state management library of JavaScript apps. So what is problem in state is another point is what is issue, what is issue with the state. So the major issue with state is not predictable. State is not predictable and not easy for debugging and not easy for debugging. State is not predictable and not easy for debugging. It have limited features to extend. It have limited features to extend. So it is not predictable and not easy for debugging. So that is the reason. So Redux is used by developers at large scale. So actually Redux is a predictable state container for JavaScript based applications. It is a predictable state container for JavaScript based applications. So JavaScript based applications use this Redux. It is a predictable state container. Predictable means it is developer's convenience. It is not for user. State, we can store the data in state and we can use it. But actually, this Redux is for developers' convenience. For developers, they have a library which makes debugging easy so that developer can exactly know so what data is stored, when it is updated, how it is changed. So earlier state is not predictable. We don't know which action will update. We don't know when it will update. But now it is trackable. Easily you can track on which action have have updated which option. Everything we can easily track. I will show you how we can track that. So this React Redux, you can see this is reduxjs.org. So it is a JavaScript library for predictable and maintainable global state management. Reducer itself, I told you that it is a global state. Application state means you can maintain the state globally for application so that you can access from anywhere. You can see here we discussed that point. It is store data globally. Reducer concept itself is to maintain data globally so that we can access and use from anywhere. I will tell you one problem actually. Means in React, what is the problem is, suppose let's create something like, let's say here we have, I have some component one, and we have component two. So we have component three like this. Now what we need is, we need to carry the data from component one to component two and component three. Here we need to carry the data. Actually, in order, after first component, the second component will come. Just like you log in, after that, some dashboard will come. After dashboard, another component you can watch. Like that, we have a hierarchy. Now, in the first component, actually, we stored some data. This data need to be provided to component three. Now, component three cannot directly access the data. What happens is, this data from component one, it is shared to two. From two, it is shared to three. That hierarchy we have to maintain. That means to reach the last component, it should go from one component to another. Now, what is the concept of reducer or redux? This data can be stored globally. Then what? This component have defined the data and it can be accessed by anyone. And any component can update into that. Automatically, it reflects everywhere. It is going to reflect everywhere. That means maintain data in a store and you access the data from any component. That is the option. Actually, we have cookies. Cookies also will do the same. Local storage will do the same. In interviews, they ask like that. We have cookies. Cookies also can do like that. Local storage also can do like that. That means you store locally, you access from any place. Then why you need Redux? Because what is cookie? It is a simple text document. Cookies are actually text documents. So cookies have limited data. They cannot handle complex data like images and all binary type of data they cannot manage. So even query string also you learnt what is the limit of query string. In query string, how many characters you can pass? Actually, we have a standard limit 2048 characters. 2048 is the standard character limit of a query string. Some browsers can do large, but the maximum limit is 2048 standard limit. That means we have query strings, we have cookies, we have session storage, local storages, but they cannot manage very complex data. The main aim of this is not just managing the data, easy to debug and all. That means what Redux will do is it provides a toolkit for developer. It provides a toolkit for developer. So Redux toolkit have various library functions have various library functions that make state predictable, debuggable, right? Yeah, and flexible, centralized. These are all the basic features. So Redux provides all these features to the developers. These are the key features to the developers. Easy to debug, easy to extend and store, centralized. I told you, if you remembered, which software pattern it follows. I told you session and application states are there. Session state follows a design pattern called single call, and application state follows singleton. Singleton means an object is created for first request, the same object is used across multiple requests. So application state is global and uses singleton pattern, is global and uses singleton pattern. Right. And I think you remembered the flow of Redux. Reducer flow I explained. Use reducer flow is what? What are the components? Major components. Use reducer major components. What are the major components? You are not practicing. What are the major components of a reducer? Remember, the main component of reducer is first one is store. Store is the location where the data is kept. Who will carry the data? Who will carry this data and provide it to? component. Data from store is collected and provided to component by state. State will provide the data to whom? State will provide the data to the component. That means component will use the data. And who will update that from the component? The updating is done by whom? The updating is done by reducer. You remembered we created a reducer function. So use reducer. What will happen? The data is present in the store. This data is accessed by state. Every component have a local state. This data will be accessed by the state. And the state is going to provide this to component. State is going to provide that to the component. Inside the component, so we have two important points here. Inside the component, the actions are performed. Actions are performed. So what reducer will do? Actually, actions trigger here. Trigger. That means you click some button or you change some value or you do some interaction. The action will trigger. Which action triggered? It is identified by reducer. What reducer will do? Actually, reducer contains the action. Actions are present here. The action is dispatched from here. That means action trigger means what? Dispatch. The actions are dispatched from here. The dispatched action will come to reducer. Reducer identifies what is the action, and according to the action, it updates the store. Reducer is going to update the store. That means reducer will update. It will update the store. Once it is updated, now again it is accessible by state and used by component. Any component can use this state. That means now this store is globally. When I say that this store is globally, that means what? Another component. Suppose another component here, another component is there. This component also can use that store. How that component can use the store? That means it also maintains a state. Through that state, it is going to maintain the data. That means this store will provide to the state and state will give to the component. So any component, and again they will come back to whom? Reducer. Every component can use this reducer. Can use this reducer. And it can update, and the reducer will update the action. And automatically what happens here is, this is the hierarchy. Any component can use the store. And from any component it updated, automatically this is going to update in the component right side. Here it will show the changes. It will show the changes. It is going to show the changes here. You update from this component, it will reflect here. You update from this component, it will reflect here. That means the data is centralized so that you can access and use from any place. That is the nature of a global store. So keeping the data globally so that we can access and use from any location. Actually, when many people learn this Redux without toolkit options, they learn. Then what happens? They will just learn how to add item into state, how to view the item from the state. But at a large scale in companies, what we do is we separately create everything. We separately maintain a store. We separately maintain a reducer. We import and use from the library and use across various components. At large scale, how people do, we will see. Because at small scale, how people do, already we done. Use reducer is doing that. Then no need to of same approach here. At large scale, we should able to utilize the tools provided by this Redux. So let's see how it works actually. So here the major components of Redux toolkit are we have a store, we have a reducer, we have state, initial state actually, this is state, and we have actions. These are the main concepts, the major components of Redux toolkit. These are the major components of the Redux toolkit. So what is their purpose? Already we learned. Store keeps the data globally at application level. Reducer defines the initial state, defines the actions. And state transports data from store to component. Right. So here data is updated when user clicks a button or selects some option from the UI. So if you want to use Redux for React, then how we set up is you need to first install Redux toolkit and support for React. And support for React. One second, I will be back. Okay. So how to install this Redux toolkit here is we need to set up npm install at the net react.js/toolkit and uh, React Redux and save. This is the flag we need to define. So React.js toolkit, that is React Redux. Because, so sorry, it is not React.js toolkit, Redux.js. Redux.js toolkit and React Redux. Right? It's not React.js, Redux.js toolkit. Redux.js toolkit you have to install and support for React because Redux.js toolkit is used by Angular also. When Angular people install it, they have to install support for Angular. Angular, Vue, or other general JavaScript apps also can use this, right? That is. So in our project, so the project that we created, you must finish that project. Otherwise, how you will practice this? Because if you done the project, then I can show you where to implement that. Right? You have to finish all the CRUD operations and all. Then I can clearly show you where to do it, where to implement that. Right? So here I will show you the process. Once you complete designing, there you implement it. That is the point you have to do. I will upload another project as I told you, shopping. In that already Redux is used. The process, everything I will give you. Right. I will share another project to you. The complete documentation of project I will share with you so that you can read the documentation and you can design it. This is a ERP project actually. This is an ERP project. This is an ERP application. It is an iShop application. Actually, it is an IEEE standard project. So this is an IEEE project. We taken the paper from IEEE and we built an app according to IEEE standards. You know IEEE, na? No? Right. So this is IEEE org. This is IEEE standards. And in this IEEE, we have an iShop. iShop is a project actually. This is iShop project. We have an iShop project. There are different iShop related options. In this iShop project, when you open the project related more details will be given to you. What is here is, it is for visually challenged, but we designed as a normal one. Visually challenged people, how you can use a cart. Visually challenged people, how they can use a shopping app is, we give accessibility options, more accessibility options. I hope you people know accessibility. right? Accessibility is one of the major point in web development, and currently it is one of the most trending at very high level, but it is not for freshers, it is for experience. Currently we are having limited job opportunities on them. Only very highly skilled people are involved in that, and these are very much used in all overseas projects these days. I Accessibility, remember, we have web accessibility. This is very much trending for experienced people, in specially involved in web development, but very rare. Means you will not even see people teaching this. But the overseas projects are now implementing this very much. Everywhere we need this. What is this accessibility? Is nothing but we need to develop a web application which is easy for visually challenged, or it is easy for physically disabled, means physically challenged people. That means even a person who don't have hands, he can operate that app. How it is possible? Through voice commands, right? Visually challenged people also can handle that. Actually, when you watch Netflix and Amazon Prime videos and all, you will see movie have audio subtitles. Do you know, in that subtitles audio option, there is an option called audio with a description? Have you ever seen that? Audio with description, audio English, audio French, audio with description will be there. Check once. Audio with description means not subtitles. Audio with description means what? Uh, it will explain the movie. What is happening in the movie, it will explain. That means generally you can hear the dialogues, but what it will do, how they are walking, where they are walking, so what is passing by, everything the audio will explain. Audio will explain that two people are sitting in a car. They started the car. Visually, people can see, but visually challenged people cannot see. They can listen only dialogue. But audio description will explain what they are doing also. You can observe there is that is the accessibility option. It is very, very trending. Means trending means not for you, highly experienced people. Very good demand is there for this, but very less people are aware of this. Very less people are aware of this. Uh, I will tell you one simple point actually. So two people, my friends who are already in web development for more than 15 years now. They are already web developers from more than 15 years. They worked on .NET technology. So my old friends, recently they got into the accessibility job of Cisco. Cisco, they are doing support for some overseas project in Cisco. Their role is web accessibility. Those two people's role is web accessibility, and their package is 1.7 crore. That is their package, 1.7 crore, and that is on web accessibility. And according to them, they have limited resources. Not many people are there on this, and their main concept is not making accessible, testing accessible. Their job is testing accessibility. Making accessibility, web developers are doing. They have a separate team for that. But testing accessibility is a major job than that. They are involved in both actually, developing, guiding the people in accessibility and testing accessibility, checking whether it is a good accessible or not and reporting that. So, and according to them, now majority all overseas projects mandatorily have to implement this. Already several projects are doing, everybody have to implement this. You will see this so much in applications. So now this is actually related to that. This project is related to that, and the complete documentation I given here. The complete documentation, how it works, what are the data modules. That means what modules it require, what are the database models, database tables and their sample, and what is the API methods, and one more is the complete React front end. This is the React front end, API requests and the React front end. I given the code also. I given the code for different modules, but in that some are pending that you have to finish. This is the complete application. So I will post this. You go through the documentation and you try. Okay. Now in this project, how to implement that here, I will show. We need to put what? First install npm install redux.js at the net redux.js/toolkit and react redux and save. This you need to set up. I will give you another example also on this. If you you open any website and you see, I told you accessibility now. Some accessibility related concept I will show you. If you open any website, suppose what is this? It is a semantic. What semantic it is? Navbar. Navbar na. So suppose I created a div. In this, I am using some navigation, but officially it is not a navbar. How to make this accessible as a navbar to the robots search engine? We use a role as nav, and we use aria label as what? Navigation. Like this we write. Then robots can easily read that, okay, this is navigation and this is a navbar. This is the accessibility option. And these area labels, area IDs, they are not used in your programming, but they are used for accessibility, so that they are easy for robots to understand and easy for search engines to understand. But this is not a concept that everybody learns, because for that you need to know about web accessibility. At a majority higher level, you can see, suppose, let's see, suppose Amazon. In Amazon, right click and view inspect. When you inspect in Amazon, you can see here. You can see here. So in the divs, whatever the divs are there here, you can see that ID is okay, but you will find lot of I will expand it. Find. And you can see here, they have these options, ARIA. You see, this is label, ARIA label. And it is Amazon.in. And this is actually the logo. This Amazon logo is there now. And for that logo, they have given this label as Amazon.in. Why? Because robots cannot read the logo. Then how robot knows what it is? Then for image and links, we can use label as any reference name. Then robot can understand that, okay, this image may be navigating to which one? Amazon.in. These are all actually related to accessibility only. These are related to accessibility. You can see this is having select is a drop down, and see described by search drop down description. So these you will never learn in HTML. So, but they are using this because that is the job of the people who make this website accessible. That means what we do is we develop it and give it to the accessibility team. That accessibility team will put all those references. That means that the team will make your page accessible, more accessible. And for that, they will add everything, whatever required. That is the reason majority, anywhere in the world, HTML will not teach you that. But almost all advanced websites, you will see that. That is the job of accessibility people. And very few people are there in that roles actually. Now we are having a good demand for that. Means we are expecting that in the coming days as a web developer, this will be trending very much. That means even for freshers also, it will have a good demand in the market with accessibility. Web developer with knowledge of accessibility is a very good demand in the market in future. Now you don't have jobs for fresher. That means any fresher is not taken in the role of accessibilities. So that is only for experienced people. Okay, now you install this Redux toolkit. Now how to use it? Actually, now set up Redux for project. How to set up Redux for project? Actually, first point here is set up Redux slicer. Set up the Redux slicer. Remember, everybody who learn Redux, they don't know these slicers and all. I am explaining at large scale how it is best, how to maintain it correctly. So what is the point here? So you set up slicer. What is a slicer is you can see in the Redux store. This is the Redux. In the Redux, actually, you can go to the tutorial. In the tutorial, it will show you how to set up Redux, how to use Redux and all. But at higher level, how people develop it, it is not present everywhere. When you see the example also given by these people, that example will be very simple. That means it will give you a simple example, just like reducer. You will not feel any difference also if you follow the example given by these people. That means you learnt in reducer one example. Same example will be like similar example will be here. But at higher level, we don't use like this. At higher level, we don't use like this. So we have a different process. What is that? I will tell you. At higher level, what we do is, what is a slicer? Actually, uh, ready-made method is present called create slice. What the slicer will do is, it configures, it configures initial state. It configures initial state and actions to manage. It configures initial state and actions to manage. Actually, so initial state defines the data to store, and actions define the methods that update the store. Actions define the methods that update the store. So generally in high level projects, what we do is we create one slicer, and that slicer contains initial state. Initial state means before application starts, before some data is stored, what should be stored, what actions to perform, what data to store, what actions to manage. That is defined by using a slicer. You have to configure a slicer. I'll give a simple syntax here. Is constant. So we have a slicer name, slicer reference actually is equal to create slicer. So we have to define name, what is the name, and initial state, initial state, and actions. Reducer defines the actions. So method name, actually you can say as action name. Action name. And what functionality it should perform. We need to define it. Later example I will give. That means a slicer contains a name and initial state and a reducer. Reducer defines the actions to be managed. Right. So generally in their basic level example, they don't show like this. What they show is just import one slicer, create one store, data is stored in that on a button click or somewhere, and it is displayed again in some component. But that is not enough. At large scale, we need to maintain like this. First, you create a slicer and configure the slicer. Why? What is advantage of doing this? Because this is going to allow you to easily extend whenever you want one more action, then you can add an action into reducer. Currently, reducer contains only one action. If you want another action, you can define another action name and you can define another functionality. That means whenever you want, you can extend easily. And the initial state, what is the data to be handled? Actually, we have constant initial state. Initial state is equal to what it should handle. That means the data to handle. You have to mention that. What is the data to be stored and what is the data to be handled? That is defined by using this initial state. What is the advantage of maintaining a slicer separately is, so it is easy to test, debug, and extend the actions or initial state. Actions or initial state. That is important. So the method name is create slice. It's not slicer. Create slice. We call it as slicer, but it is method is create slice. Now here, after this, after creating the slicer, now the second point is, so configure the store. Configure the store. Here what you have to do is import the slicer, then get the initial state, initial state from slicer. Then what you have to do is create a store and inject the initial state into store. We have to create a store and inject the initial state into store. These are the basic things we have to do. So Redux toolkit provides a method create store. Create store is the method. By using the method, we can create. So actually, latest Redux changed from create store to configure store. Very recent version changed it. That means some old projects you may see create store, it will also work, but now very recently they updated. From create store, they have changed it to what? Configure store. So because remember these libraries are changing, you have to keep in touch with them. These all third party libraries may be changing some new features. They may be adding every few days. You have to keep in touch. You can't blindly follow the same that you have learned in your class after 5 months, 6 months, right? Because they may add some new things. Sometimes even complete installation process will be different. They change library. So that is the reason you should be careful in monitoring what is changing. So syntactically, we have export. So what is it? Function configure store. Just roughly I am giving. and what that configure store will be. So it uses a reducer, and in the reducer, what it is going to use? The store, and it will get the data from slicer name. That means what it is going to do is it will get the initial state from slicer, and whatever data present in initial state, that it will keep in the store. It is going to keep that in the store. So initial state and keep in the store. This slicer name comes from the slicer you created. Whatever initial state is present, it will keep that in the store. And who is going to update the store and use the store? So that means the third point is create a reducer with actions from slicer, and inject into store. Inject updates into store, we can say. Updates into store. That's what you need to follow. So what this reducer will do is, reducer provides use dispatch. It provides use dispatch hook. So it is used to trigger the actions and update the data into store. Use dispatch is used. So it is going to dispatch the actions. Now, where is the data present? Data is present in the memory. In the memory where data is present, it should locate. After locating, it should inject into your component. And who is responsible for locating the values in memory and injecting into component? In general programming, already we learned who is responsible for locating data in memory and injecting into a component. Locating data in memory and injecting into a component. Who is responsible for locating data in memory? We learned cookies. Who is responsible for locating cookie in memory and injecting the cookies into the components? Who is responsible? We said context. Who is responsible for locating the context data and injecting into the component? It is a component of dependency injection. And which component of dependency injection is responsible for locating data in memory? Which component of dependency injection is responsible for locating data in memory? Provider. We learn now. Provider, injector, I told you. Who is responsible for locating data in memory? in any service, in any location, locating data in memory is done by whom? Provider. We have a consumer, we have a provider, and we have a injector. Right? That means now what we have to do is you have to configure a provider for store at application level. At application level means index dot what? TSX or JS if it is JS. So configure a provider. So provider locates the data in memory. So injector injects the data into component. Provider locates and injector injects. That means syntactically, actually you need a provider. This provider uses a store that gets the data from the store and it will provide to the component. That means app. It provides to this component so that in this app, any component can use that data. You know that in order to access the data and use from the memory, it should be inside the provider scope. If it is in the provider scope, it can manage. So these are all the concepts of Redux toolkit. Now we will implement in a project. Where we will implement in a project is in our video library project. Whenever user is watching the video, suppose he don't want to watch video now, he want to watch the video later, then he will click a button watch later. Then it will be stored in the watch later list. He can watch other videos and whenever he want, he can go to watch later. It will show which one he saved so that he can watch that. That means at application level, we will maintain the videos which he saved as watch later. Then we can get them and show them whenever he wants. That we will implement through the Redux. That we'll see tomorrow. Right, tomorrow we will implement the example. But remember, you have to do it. First, you finish the project. If you don't finish the project, you cannot implement this. First, you do the project. And tomorrow I will show you how to implement this in our project. Then tomorrow we will see testing deployment, how it is done, how to test the project, how to deploy onto cloud. We will see that cloud deployment. We will see how it is done. That we will see in the next session. Tomorrow I'll do that. Okay, right.